All right, guys, we're going to get started here in just a second. Mega 360, Mega Live. Josh Payniard, if you've watched any of our stuff in years past, he's been over to Bucks a number of times and always a wealth of knowledge, knows the Humminbird products, but more importantly, knows sonar inside and out. So if you got questions, drop them in the comments. I'm sure he'd love to answer them. Again, we are here till 5 tonight. Get on down here if you can. But give us just a minute. I think the last few folks are piling in, and then we'll get started.
All right. Hey, welcome everybody. I'm Mike Lisco, the host for your 7-hour series here at the Alabama Fishing Expo. Known Josh for a long time and does a great sonar on sonar. And two things in particular that everybody wants to know about: 360 in live technology. He's going to explain that all to you guys. Enjoy the show.
All right, guys. Thanks for coming out. Appreciate it. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Mega 360 and Mega Live and how to utilize those together at one time. One thing I can say is that if you pay attention out there right now, anybody that's running some type of forward-facing sonar, they will, 9 times out of 10, you're going to see them running our Mega Live with it, whether it's our Mega Live or another forward-facing sonar out there. So just kind of want to discuss how to utilize those together to make you more productive on the water. So we'll talk a little bit about live real quick, just kind of talking about our Mega Live. We do a 20 degree angle coming out and 120 degree coming down and back. So you can actually see that it actually comes back behind the boat a little bit at the nose of the boat and then shoots out forward. We can range out there. I mean, I've ranged out 100 feet seeing fish and watching fish react to the bait. So that's what your forward-facing sonar is. With your 360, that is being able to see 360 degrees around the boat, or some guys even like to do just a 180 right out in front, so they're just looking at 180 degrees. I typically like to do the full 360 because I may miss something behind me. I may miss this laydown. I may miss a rock pile or something like that. So I'm really going to use the full advantage of the 360 around me at all times, along with all my other sonar. So live technology, being able to see in different modes. This is our down view. So you can see this is a stack of crappie that we had up here that you can take a look at and watch your bait. Watch you present that, seeing the fish behavior. And that's kind of what this is all about. And one thing that Live has talked about and really taught a lot of us anglers is the behavior of the fish. The other thing that we brought out last fall was our target lock. Now, I've been using this for a while now. This is another accessory that we can attach to our Ultrix trolling motor. So again, part of that one boat network that we always talk about. The target lock, the advantage of having target lock, couple things. Number one, it's something that's off of the side of the trolling motor, so I can still use my spot lock at the same time. And then I can control this, the transducer and where it's pointed via a foot pedal. But the main advantage of having the target lock on here is that when I see this brush pile, or if I see a brush pile on my 360 and I look at it with my Live, I can hit a button and target lock in on that. So no matter where the boat drifts, I can drift left, I can drift right, that just stays locked in on that target. So now I know where my transducer is pointed the whole time, and I can make a presentation to that when I see those fish in the brush pile. So that target lock has now stepped us up even further. I can do things with everything linked together. I can go back to steering it with even my foot pedal. So I can put it on Minn Kota steer and it will actually follow my foot pedal, kind of like what everybody does now, even though it's on a separate accessory there. So again, just talked about it, Minn Kota steer, being able to steer it and have it follow the head of my trolling motor so I know that I have it. I can do a Mega Live sweep. Basically, it sweeps 120 degrees for you, so as you're going down the bank, this can be looking for fish, brush piles, everything for you. And then the One Boat Network button, which we make that you can program to mark a waypoint of where you're casting from, turn off the Mega Live sweep. You can turn on and off the Minn Kota steer from there. You can turn on and off the live pinging, or you can make this go back to the home position. So if you have this pointed one direction or the other, and you're getting ready to pull the trolling motor up, you can have it set to home position to where this will get back forward faced, and then you can lift your trolling motor up and go on its way. So it has a lot of features there, especially as you have the One Boat Network, everything linked together and talking to each other. You have all those features there. So the user interface with ours, with the target lock and on the Solix, Apex, and then the Helix, you can have this virtual remote basically right here, so you can control a number of things with it. You can target lock from it, you can do the sweep, you can do the Minn Kota steer, the home, different things there. But let's talk about using 360 now and Mega Live together to make you more productive. So again, as you can see, a 360 view here that we have. There is a bunch of boulders here that we have marked with waypoints, a bunch of rock that we do. So as I have this again, as I have the 360 mounted to the trolling motor, and let's just say I have the live mounted to the trolling motor, not the target lock, I can still turn that trolling motor and look at these each individual boulders. So as I want to look and see, is there any fish over here? Is there any fish in this pile? So I can systematically dissect that area with not only the 360, but then looking at it with the live. Same thing here. I was on a small ledge that came off here. I can systematically look over with my live, either with the target lock or it on the trolling motor, point that transducer in that direction, and then look at that rock pile to see those, to look for those fish that are there, and then make my presentation to it. So having that 1-2 combination really gives you an advantage out there on the water. So again, doesn't always have to be our forward-facing sonar, but you can use the 360 in conjunction with that just to make yourself, again, productive out there. Another scenario where, again, 360 is allowing you to see different things, different objects, big rock piles, a small individual boulder, a small ledge here with a bunch of them on it, and then again, being able to look at that rock pile, see the individual fish swimming around there, and make your presentation to that fish. So a great 1-2 punch that we have connected, especially when you have the target lock, and I've been running the target lock for a while now. It is very nice to be able to see that on the screen, hit target lock, and not worry about my transducer, me missing anything. Because with forward-facing sonar, that 20-degree cone is just like a flashlight. So I'll tell you, if you ever want to see how that sonar works, take a flashlight and get yourself out there and point that to the wall and just move it. And watch how fast you move. When you move something, how fast you lose that. So it's almost like it's sound, but it's almost like spotlighting onto something. So when you're using forward-facing sonar, that's a lot of times, if you ever notice, when you turn, you miss something or you lose something. So angles play a key role in what you see and don't see with that. So a lot of times when you're tracking your bait, if the boat drifts or you turn that trolling motor one way or the other, you can lose your bait pretty quickly. And the fish. This is a great shot here. This was prior to me having live. This was one of the shots that I had with live, and then I had one just like this in the same area prior to live where I was able to find the fish on my 360. So being able to see the fish, I mean, there's an individual tire with the 360. That Mega 360, that's how detailed this can get. So I'm seeing the tire, I'm seeing fish on top of the tire. I see the school of spotted bass here. There's an individual there. You can see their shadows. There's individual fish up here. This one just came in. So the good thing about 360 that kind of helps you out is there's 2 refresh points. So this is new information on the backside of this line here. This is new information on the backside of this line here. So as these fish come in on both sides, even before I go to look at them with live, I literally can line myself up with this school of fish, turn and make a cast, and be able to make that presentation even without having that live sonar on there. But as I see them come in, I can then turn, look at it with live, and watch that school of fish and make my presentation to see how they react and see their behavior. Because a lot of times what happens is I make that cast, I watch my bait fall to them, I may see them react, but as maybe I'm throwing a shaky head, maybe I'm casting a drop shot or a small swim bait and I'm bringing it past these fish. If they react to the bait but then go back down, there's a few things that I automatically think of. I either have to change my presentation, the color of the bait, or I need to change baits. And then my fourth one is if that school after that right there doesn't happen, I move. What can get you caught up a lot of times with the live sonar is when you see all these fish and you keep making presentation after presentation after presentation and you don't get these fish to bite. A lot of times you hear tournament guys say they kind of get caught up trying to get these fish to react. So what this can tell you again is that behavior. If I've made those kind of switches and those presentations and those fish don't react, I'm moving on to another school of fish. And that's what you want to do. This will teach you a lot. One of the things that I learned this winter is the perception is, so I live close to Lake Lanier. I fish Lake Lanier a lot. It's a deep, clear reservoir. I found fish in 28 to 40 feet of water around bait. That water surface temp now was 50 degrees. And we always hear that in that colder water, these fish get a little lethargic. I'm going to tell you what I saw on live was the exact opposite of that. These fish were swimming and moving pretty fast. And you could see it by the way how fast they were coming in and out of the screen. And when that bait left, my mistake was I could still see all these fish. And I was still trying to catch all these fish. I didn't leave. I should have left with the bait, because when I got out to the bait, where some of those fish had followed, those fish were the most active fish. Those fish were biting again. So use it as that tool, both of these as that tool to help you out. Forward-facing sonar really has taught us a lot. I just saw a snippet from one of the greats, Rick Clunn, had made a comment about how he is actually in favor of forward-facing sonar because it has taught him, and I believe Mr. Rick Clunn is about 74, 76 years old, and he's still learning to this day. And he said that was one of the things he didn't understand is he got to really better understand the behavior of the fish. So use that as that tool. Make sure that you're being... when you see these fish, again, if they're not reacting the way you need to move on and get to some other fish. Again, another school of fish that I was able to find on not only our down imaging, but I found those fish out here. This is a big school of crappie. I could find all those fish on the 360, even out over deep water. Now, these fish were hovered over deep water and schooled up. This was actually a small school right there. Your big school. And then you can't see it quite on this screenshot. It's a little harder to see. You can see it on the down imaging, but this haze all the way around, it wasn't interference or noise. That was all bait fish. Those crappie were sitting on top of all that bait fish over 40 feet of water, just hovering around, waiting for that school of bait to do the wrong thing. And that wrong thing was to come up off the bottom, and then they would actually eat that bait. So again, then being able to scan over and watch that bait and see those and watch that bait react or see those fish come in and react to this bait and then be able to make a presentation to those fish, it really helps you. Again, a 1-2 punch. See the fish, be able to turn, watch the bait, watch the fish react. Again, that same school, you can see that they're bunched up. This was, again, a big school of crappie, all the bait, some individual fish that were in there, and then there was the big group there. And then be able to scan over and see those fish in that grouping. And that's kind of how you're going to notice what you're looking at. Understanding not only the species of fish that you're fishing was going to tell you a lot of times of what you're looking at. So everything grouped up in here, that was all crappie that were stacked up on one another. Bass are going to be a little bit more split up. You wouldn't see them so stacked up. You'd see them more separated like this throughout and more linear than horizontal here. So again, just utilizing those tools for that just gives you the opportunity to be more productive on the water. That's why if you come out to our display and look at it, we basically have set it up on purpose the way we did, showing either 360 and live or live and 360, kind of like you might be looking at it on the screen on the front of the boat there. So utilizing those tools together really will help you. So again, a great example here of what we've done too with our technology. We did this probably, wow, it's probably gone on about four years ago now. We did something with the software in our units to allow us to kind of really make the fish stand out like this. Also, we did this to help with right now algae bloom. How many people are messed up because of all the algae or the pollen in the air, right? So that happens to that can actually create some haze in the water with the imaging, because we use what we call mega imaging. Basically, mega imaging is a high frequency. It's one of the higher frequencies you can get before you move to military sonar. So we can go up all the way up to 1300 kilohertz or 1.3 megahertz with our sonar technology. But if you happen to see, and I'm going to forward again, this haze in the water that I told you was all bait fish, this is kind of what it looks like when there's pollen in the water, an algae bloom, something like that. Well, what we did is we added something called water column sensitivity to both helix, solix, and apex. And when that pollen gets in the water, you can actually take that to a negative, and that'll clean that pollen up. Now, on the reverse side of that, what you have to do is you have to increase your sensitivity a little bit, because you got to counterbalance that a little for that. What I did here, this was during the winter time when I had the 360. I actually bumped my water column sensitivity up one because it was colder, clearer water, no algae bloom, nothing like that, because I wanted anything suspended in the water column to stand out. So what I did is I went to the brown palette here. For my eyes, this worked the best. I went to the brown palette. I pushed the sensitivity up just enough to where you could see the hard bottom, where it started to really show some hard bottom. And then with that water column sensitivity bumped up to 1, now you can see how the fish really started to stand out, and I could look at those fish and start picking those fish off and I was actually using the shaky head during this time and be able to catch. I caught fish for about 45 minutes doing this. The one thing though that I find funny is over the last year doing this seminar, what I realized that I missed the whole time. So we have this group of fish. Here, I have a fish that come up over this tire. It was kind of funny. This fish there was a couple fish that would end up over the tire, off the tire, over the tire, off the tire when you do this. And then I saw some fish come in here. I saw all these fish, but there was another group that I didn't realize that I was seeing out a little bit further in my range that I didn't notice. And it's hard to see it from there, but if you get close, there's actually individual shadows in here. There were fish up here in this softer bottom out away from me that I didn't notice. So pay attention to that too on your 360, because remember, it's side imaging rotating 360 degrees. So a lot of times, if you don't have your graph set up this way, a lot of times what happens is this is really all you're going to be seeing, and I can tell you probably a good 75% of the anglers miss on side imaging. Whether it's ours, whether it's a Garmin, a Lowrance, most guys, they miss these shadows. And a lot of times now on this, it's more defined shadows. It's almost like round little holes in the bottom. But a lot of times what you'll see on side imaging, and we talked about this on Friday, you're going to see individual pen marks. It's like me taking a fine ballpoint pen and just making little lines on the stream, right? That's how those fish look, because you got to remember, I'm ranged out 70 feet here, right? So the pixelation of these fish, and these spotted bass were all about 1.75 pounds to 2.5 pounds that I was catching. So you can see how big they showed up here at 70 foot. Now, if I would have ranged out to 100 feet, which I could have, but honestly, you can see where I was setting. If I ranged out 100 feet, I was going to hit the bank, right? So a lot of my sonar was going to be hitting the bank, bouncing back, and not seeing anything. So I was going to have dead sonar. So I ranged in. But if I stretched out, What happens when I stretch that out? When I stretch that out, I stretch out the pixels, right? Those fish become smaller. So if I would have stretched that out anymore, you wouldn't have seen those defined little tic-tacs like that as much. They actually would have been little white dots that probably would have blended in more on this hard side. Not so much here because it was a little softer right here, as you can tell, but I probably would have just seen little pinpoint white dots instead of what I saw there. So pay attention to that, especially, and it happens, honestly, not so much on live, but on your 360. Again, it's just like side imaging. So you gotta play around with the range a little bit so that you can get yourself set up just like this, and you'll be able to see those fish on the 360. We did this last April. We were on Gunnersville. We happened to be scanning with side imaging, and we saw those little lines. It was like me taking a ballpoint pen and just drawing little shadow lines on there, and they were on shell beds. And what we did is we come up to those shell beds and we spot lock down and we use the 360. The 360 then would be able to pick up those fish on the 360, and we could turn to live and watch them, or we could just make that cast. In fact, I was basically the co-angler in the boat on that up in Gunnersville, and Miller, who's out there with me, he would say they're at 9 o'clock or they're at 3 o'clock. And I would just turn and make that cast, and we would catch those bass that were sitting on those shell beds. So 360 gives you the ability to really line up, like I talked about. When I see this fish right here, I literally can take my rod and say, okay, he's right here, line up and make the cast. And I was able to cast those fish even without turning the live. I was able to hit those fish about 90% of the time. So utilizing these two tools together to see that and then see those fish and I don't have a split screen, of course, but being able to have either two graphs set there, one seeing 360, one seeing the live, and make that presentation, that really helps you out. Those are two tools that when you put them together can help you catch more fish, whether it be crappie, brim, bass. You're looking for, I know guys fish with it for walleye at times. So any of those fish that tend to school up like that, you really be able to make that presentation and be able to see around the boat. And that's the one thing I like, because now, like I said, if we go back, now with the ability to have target lock on the boat as well, I still get to use my spot lock. The 360 is locked in, going to be seeing the 360 degrees around the boat if I want, or I can do the 180, and then I can have my target lock, and when I see that brush pile. Now, the one thing that this is not going to be able to do with the target lock is lock in on fish, because that object is going to move. The target lock, that sonar, when it pings and hits, will not be able to follow fish. Now, if we get that advanced, those fish are really in trouble, right? Because if we get that advanced where sonar pings and says, wait a minute, he's not there anymore, we got to move, that's going to be scary. But with this, again, I can lock in on that brush pile. So I can tell you, bass fishermen, crappie fishermen really love this, because when you have that whole one boat network, and you're always going to hear Humminbird, Minn Kota, part of the same conglomerate, Johnson Outdoors, we're always going to make things work together in conjunction. So when I see that, I see it on my 360, then I turn around and look at that brush pile and lock in. I spot lock down, lock in. I know where my transducer is pointing with the target lock now, because I'm following the arrow on the top of that, and I'm just making that cast. Remember, it's a 20-degree cone. Any forward-facing sonar, I think Lowrance is actually still 18, so you got to remember, it's even narrower. So like I said, let's take a flashlight and let's spotlight it on that wall. If I'm looking at that thermostat right there and I just happen to turn a quarter turn, that thermostat goes black, right? Disappears. So remember that as you're using any type of forward-facing sonar. Any little touch of the trolling motor, you're going to lose fish. You're not going to get a solid picture of the brush pile, or you wouldn't get a solid picture of that rock pile, because every time you move, that's that flashlight moving with it, right? So remember that. Same thing, bait tracking. It is so easy that if you don't have something separate like a target lock and you're drifting a little bit, even in a spot lock, you're drifting a little bit, you constantly have to have your foot on that trolling motor to look at that bait and watch those fish. Okay? So again, one thing we want to make sure we're doing is making everybody here productive on the water. And when you put those two things, when you put those things in combination with another, and then this is just one version of how you can do it. You put all that in combination of one and using that target lock, the Mega Live 360, it really helps you be more productive. It really helps you watch the behavior. And again, I want to preference that. I don't care whose forward-facing sonar you're looking at. When those fish stop, show you that their behavior is they do not want to bite any presentation or any change, it's time to go. It's hard, I know it, believe me. I did it this winter, like I just said. I spent a couple hours fishing for fish that did not want to bite, no matter what I did. And I didn't move in the right direction. And when I finally did and moved and found the fish with bait, those fish ate. These fish roaming around did not. So don't get caught up. You hear them say it's a video game. It can be a video game. But just make sure that you utilize these two tools and utilize the forward-facing sonar to educate yourself about the behavior. Because when those fish stop, you want to move on and go find the next group of fish. Okay? I know some of y'all got in here a little bit late, just talking about using the 360 and the Mega Live together to catch more fish and be more productive out there. But any questions on that? Any questions on 360? Any questions understanding 360 or the Live? Yes, sir.
Yeah, so a question on 360, I see how it's showing you the terrain.
Yep.
That's cool.
Uh-huh.
So was that like a glass calm condition? Because my question is, how does it look when you have a windy condition?
So if you have a choppier condition that's moving up and down, you may tend to see, and I'll get on this, you may tend to see some kind of wave lines in here, meaning you're going to see some more lines, right? You may see some shadow lines kind of like this on the outer edge from that moving up and down. But typically with 360, I don't see that as much as I do with like side imaging. As I'm idling and it's rough, we see this a lot in saltwater as we're using side imaging because it can tend to be rough out there or in windy conditions. You'll see just the wavy lines on there. You may tend to get a little bit of this, which this is prop noise. This is just the prop rotating, but you may see a little bit of that out here, but I don't see it as much as I do when I'm more idling. Yep.
So this view right here,
Uh-huh.
so it's constantly scanning.
Yes, sir.
So if my boat then starts to move, will that stay in that position?
So,
And my
yeah,
boat will just move, right?
Yeah, if your boat, your nose is moving or anything like that, remember it's locked onto the trolling motor up front in position and it's rotating here. But if your boat drifts, I may not see this full rock because the angle of the, remember, sonar is sound. So you can hear my voice reverberating, right? So sonar is sound. It's all about the angles. It's all about how that sees. I don't have the picture here, but there's a picture I did where I was at a dock. And I did this just for my own test, right? I got at a dock and I pointed right directly in the dock so I could see what's underneath it. My 360 didn't show much. But as soon as I turned my boat to go towards the front of the dock and angled out, I saw everything up underneath that dock. I saw the artificial fish attractors. I saw a ball of bait just by making that one move. So sound reverberates, and what basically happens is your transducer, your 360, as it's rotating, it's pulsing out a sound. Multiple frequencies at a time. It's going out, and it's going to hit him. The first one's going to hit him, come back to me. Then it's going to bounce off, and it's going to try to fit. With Mega 360, with Mega Imaging, it's a very thin beam. That means that beam can come right between these two guys and see you, and then bounce back to me. If it was anybody ever used our old 360 with the 455? It's a wider beam. So what happens is that 455 is a big band, right, of sound. Can I get through these two guys and see you? Or am I going to hit these two guys and then bounce back?
Okay.
So what's going to happen is as I hit these guys are going to become one, and it's going to come back, and I'm just going to see one big blob here. It's never going to get to you. But Mega 360, meaning that mega frequency is higher frequency, it can slide through here. But the angle is crucial. So if I turn this way, it going this way, Now, not only do I see you two, I see them two back there. So it doesn't matter if it's down imaging, side imaging, 360, even live. Your angle really plays a role on what you're going to see. So watch live, and that's why I kind of like live now, because it teaches everybody what we've been trying to teach for last 4 or 5 years. Because as soon as I move that beam disappears, I lose everything here, but I see out here in front of me. Okay? Make sense? Yep. What other questions, guys?
How shallow will that run?
I've been all the way down in 2.5 feet and been able to get a good picture. Now, what I had to do is, in that sense, to your point, I've been able to do it, but I have to take my range in. I can't range out as far, so to speak, because typically when you're shallow water, you're not too far away from the bank, or you're not too far, the pocket may not be as so you're going to get dead sonar, basically. Yeah. But I've been in as shallow as 2.5 foot of water. Now, on the 360, you have to adjust that. Typically, what I like to suggest is, depending on the type of fisherman you are, I like to suggest setting that in, get yourself out in about 5 foot of water and setting that. If you don't know, our 360 has what we call wet switch. So does our Mega Live. Their wet switch has to be under the water for it to start rotating. If it's out of the water, it's going to say disabled out of the water. So you want that underneath, first of all, but I say 5 feet because a lot of times guys tend to like to go shallow like you're talking about. And if you get too shallow, if you had it down there too far, it's just not going to see anything. It needs to be up there.
So when you're shallow, this time of year, you're looking for the broader colors, which is the hard spot.
Yes. Yep. Okay. Yep. So yeah, that gets you back to, let's see, this one right here. So you're looking for this. So in this palette is the brown. The white is hard bottom. So this was, you can see, this was 13 foot of water. So out and around me was fairly hard bottom. This was a little bit softer on this side of the boat. Still has a little bit of hardness right there. But that's what you're looking for. If you're looking for like Gunnersville, shell beds, you're looking for this. Now the one thing with 360, just like side imaging, is you get in that hydrilla and that, you're just going to see the mats, so to speak. You're not, if there's something, again, if it hits that wall and that's the mat of grass, that's where it stops, because that's where the sound can only get so far, and then it's got to come back and tell me, hey, I can only get that far. I will tell you the one thing I learned though, and this is through learning from the military sonar side of things, is that, believe it or not, your water temperature plays a bigger role than what people understand. That really plays the role in what you see and what you don't see, okay? So the colder the water, you got to understand you're probably going to have to turn your sensitivity up, right? Because it's dense. That sound's not going to travel as far. I would have to assume that, if you took a dry suit and submerged yourself in the water and a boat was going by 100 yards away, he's probably going to be a dull sound. You get in there in the summertime, we've all done it, right? You jump in the boat, put your head underwater and listen to a boat go by. You come up, you think he's right next to you, and he's 100 yards away. So just think about it that way. The warmer that water is, that sound can travel a lot easier. Now, again, kind of back where I was talking about, with mega imaging, it is very sensitive. So if there's particles in the water, if there's algae bloom, if there's pollen in the water, it can pick that up. But that's why we came in and under the Helix and Solix and Apex, we put the water column sensitivity, because I can clean that up using that. Before, I would tell you, you would have to go back on like side imaging, down imaging, something like that, back to the old 455. Now you don't have to do that. We clean that up with our water column sensitivity, and then you just adjust your sensitivity to kind of counterbalance that. Yep. Good question. So it's updating in 2 spots right away, automatically. So it's kind of like radar. When you ever watch the weather radar as it's rotating, you see it on the screen? It's going to update here as it's moving. So as it's rotating, it's constantly updating. So it's updating here, and it's updating here. So I have 2 refresh points all the time. Yep, good question.
So with radar, the slower the speed of the rotation, the more it's going to pick up.
Yes, more detail.
Can you adjust that speed?
You can. We can go from 1 all the way up to 6.
And is that the same as you do like with side scan with your speed?
No, side scan, we're going to tell you our chart speed, the way they default the chart speed, gives you the best overall picture because of the way it doesn't stretch out the pixels. And that's the same thing here. If I crank that up to 6, I'm following maybe that camera base, and I'm just going to probably isolate my area just to watch it the whole time. It's going to get very distorted. Typically, we're defaulted at a speed of 3 out of that 6, and it's the best overall. Now, you can slow it down. Say I'm fishing for crappie or brim. I can slow that down to a 2, and you're going to see it very detailed. You're going to see those fish in the beds. Like we've seen it before with brim. You'll see the indentions, the nest, and you'll see the white dots sitting in there. I've seen it on side imaging. I've seen it on 360. You'll see it there. You'll just see that white dot sitting in there, and you'll say, yep, there's all the brim. They're sitting there. Yep, for sure. Good question. Anything else, guys? I'm telling you, if you get a chance and as you're looking to advance and put the technology on the boat, come talk to us. Come see the 360. Come see the Mega Live. These two as tools, no matter what you're doing, bass fishing, crappie fishing, brim fishing, it's two things that can really help you be more productive out there in the water, and that's what we're looking for. Okay? Michael, anybody on live? Any questions there? Okay. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
All right, guys. Well, I'm going to flip this around. All right. We'll be back. Another sonar seminar here in just a quick second. I think Mike Del Visco is going to be back with us. If you missed it yesterday, he does a great one. Yeah, come back and join us in just about 15 minutes. We will see you on